Okay, it's always good when you actually unmute your mic. All right, so welcome to Coffee and a Comic Book Club. We are about to get underway in discussing Emilia Clarke's new book, Mom, Mother of Madness. This is the 1 in 10 variant. As you can see, another variant behind. If you haven't got this book yet, some here tonight may suggest you do so, and others may suggest you don't. And it looks like Mark has joined into the comment section. We're still working out the actual video section of this feed. So those that are members of the book club got an email sent to them. I probably should have sent it all out to their Instagram accounts as well. That will actually navigate you to the link so I can bring you into the actual discussion forum. So, Mark, since you are here, are you able to hear me okay? I'm hoping I'm just not talking to myself. Okay. And forgive me, I'm learning all this new technology on YouTube live streaming and trying to bring in hosts to discuss. Cool. So while we are waiting for a few others to join, because I know I started this about 5 minutes before 5 o'clock, just so I could start getting people set up. I'm already getting messages from a couple people asking if I sent the email. I did, so it seems like some may not have gotten it, or maybe it went into their spam account. Looks like we got one person trying to join right now. If not, I will. Strange. I sent it out about 45 minutes ago. Let me double check and see if I can get this link out to you all a little easier. I know sometimes utilizing the mail system I do, sometimes it staggers it, so it might have sent it out a little bit, or it could have went to your spam. So let me check. I am going to shoot some of you the message again. I'll just directly send it instead of the way that I had it. Let's see. Okay, so I sent a few out direct. That's super strange. Hopefully others are getting it. I'm going to have to go through and actually send it all out to them. Okay, Mark, I just resent you one. Sent Brandon you one. It's so strange that it didn't go through the way that it should have. Okay. So it is officially 5 o'clock. So if you're watching this on the rewind, apologies. This is the very first one. And you know what is even more crazy? I forgot to fill up my mug. So while you guys check your emails, I'm going to go get some coffee and fill up. Because it wouldn't be Coffee and a Comic without Coffee and a Comic. Okay. All right, looks like we got Flip Through up in here. Let me get him all activated and set up. Let's see here. Oh, that's a warm cup of coffee. Way to burn my hand. All right. There's Flip Through. Mic check.
Audio, can you hear me all right?
Okay, I can hear you. You're all good.
Cool.
And here's Brandon with Apollo City Comics.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good, man. How you doing?
Doing good.
All right. I'm going to play this on real quick. How does this... Okay, and that's the one where I can switch it. Okay, this is all new to me. So let me go put my coffee back real quick.
Let me grab my book. Let's see here.
So I know we had some people that were talking about just coming into the comment section itself. I'm going to try to monitor that. And others just wanted to actually just watch and kind of participate. And then some hit me up and said they're going to be out of town, so they're going to hit the rewind. So, okay. But Mark, I just saw your last story.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think I have similar sentiments of sorts, but I gotta come from a different position this time around.
Well, yeah, I've got things to say on both sides, So I'll just say that for the discussion part. But overall, that was my overall consensus about it.
Right. Okay. Let me see. What did I just do here? I really need to invest into a second monitor. I've just decided, because if I'm going to do this, I need to have eyes on multiple screens here. Okay. So I've actually had to read this book 3 times now.
Oh.
I did a second time today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was one of those ones where I like to be open-minded about all things I read. And this one, it's interesting, to say the least. But I want to start off by saying, first off, because we are here, and it should have been at the very beginning, and when I do this more structured down in the future for other books we go through, it'll have more of a better opening, hopefully, and it'll work out. But again, I want to introduce Emilia Clarke's mom, Mother of Madness. Initially, when I first heard about this book and some of the synopsis behind it, talking about a single mother with superpowers, I got a little excited. I mean, I was raised by a single mother, and I know how hard it was for her. So there is a demographic out there that I think is in need of something like that. That's the beauty of comic books, is there's a place for anyone and everyone. You just got to find your own niche and your own kind of go-to of sorts. Now, with that said, there's a section in the very back I did want to read that was from Emilia Clarke, that maybe if I would have read this very first, it would have changed my initial reaction. But I don't know. I kind of like the shock value initially when I first started reading it. So in here, she has a little letter from Emilia. I'm not going to read the entire thing. It's pretty long. Get the book, read it yourself. But there's a section here that says, let me just clarify this one real quick. Now, why, you might ask, did I decide to write this? Well, I'd be lying if I didn't state for the record that I am an out-and-out feminist, but a very friendly one. There are many things I care about, but one of the biggest is young people and their mental health. So that's coming from Emilia Clarke, and that should give you some insight when you start reading this book. If you haven't read it yet, or if you're going to read it, or if you did read it but didn't check that part out, that could probably explain certain aspects of this book that I think some readers may have found a little pushy, to say the least, or maybe a little one-sided in certain areas.
It's a heck of a big sledgehammer.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
just
was
joined.
definitely. I think it was, I walked into this book blind. I really didn't like do any research about it. I just knew Emilia Clarke wrote it. I saw that Marguerite Bennett had some, help with her because this is the first book that she's written. Of course, she's known for Game of Thrones and stuff like that. And I went into it just like I got it in the mail today, and I opened it up and I read it twice. And in a way, once I read the end of it, it kind of felt like, okay, I took it in a totally different direction. I really took it in as like how people are currently feeling because of the pandemic. This was like pretty much an effect book because of the pandemic. The anxieties, the fears, the overwhelming emotions, and even the social situations that were all kind of awkward now that we're back, or somewhat back into hanging out with people, going to parties, doing stuff like that. And in my head, when I was, when I was first going through it, I was like, oh, this is just a response to COVID and a lot of, especially younger generations, current feelings about COVID and experiencing that and coming out of it. Once I got to that back part, I was like, oh, okay, I might have read a little too much into this, like once I was going on to it. But I guess it does have the subtle hints, such as like the mask, like when they're on the subway and kind of stuff like that. So that's where once I saw that, that's where I picked up, this is just an emotional response to what maybe that she knows or stories she's heard, or just kind of just reading the news every day. You're seeing what people are feeling and, having to go through for the first time.
No, that's a good point. Especially, it's interesting that, comics have always been a part of our culture, showing everyday life and how it is with its own take on it. And we're now seeing comics coming out where characters are now drawn with masks over their face. In certain parts of the world, that's not a new thing. When I lived in Asia, it was kind of a thing over there for the most part for a long time. But here in the States, it's a very new thing. So now to see it reflecting in our comic books, it's going to be an interesting thing going forward into the, 10, 20 years when we go back to look at certain books. Because when you look back at like old Superman or Spider-Man books from the 50s and 60s, or even the Nam and Punisher books, you see certain things drawn and put in there that you don't really see in today's culture. And it just shows that sign of the time. So that is kind of a cool little thing that I like about the comics. Not this one in particular, but in comics in general and how we adapt to our society. And it shows in there. But Mark, what's one of the things that you actually enjoyed about this book?
So there's actually a few things I think it did well. I'm going to stay away from the content because the content I didn't, the story itself I didn't care for, and we could talk about that a little bit later as far as why does someone consider her a hero and all that kind of stuff. So let's back up to the things. I really dug the art. I thought the art was absolutely fantastic.
Right.
Not only just the way the drawing, but I think the paneling, the facial expressions. There's this one page, and I thought this was a lot of fucking fun. Fun was where she's like all hyped up on Mountain Dew, basically, and she's zipping around doing all these like tying people's shoelaces, spilling their coffee on them, all that kind of stuff. I thought that was pretty hilarious. So the art was really good.
Okay. I know what scene you're talking about.
The puzzle piece panel layout. I love that. I think it's so interesting. Yeah, it's kind of similar to this one right here, where she's explaining some of her emotions, and it's all kind of golden and whatnot.
Oh, right.
That paneling, great stuff.
Kind of same in the breakdown of this right here as well, where it's the art is coming out. I think we can all agree that Bennett did an awesome job on the artwork in this. All in all, like that.
I really like this panel right here. This picture of her. This is right before she's running around and jacking with everybody, and she's got that look on his face. You could just tell, like she's ready to jack some people up. She's ready to screw some people over and stuff. Have some fun with it. So I even like the facial expressions. I thought the artist captured really well. The writing I think was good, but it felt, I think it was well written, but it had a very juvenile slant to it. I think, I got a
very young adult vibe.
It felt almost like even the discussions and stuff were almost Bendis speak, but not even as good or bad as Bendis speak, but just trying to replicate that freeform conversation, I guess. But
Right.
I think it was good, but obviously I'm not the target market for this. So I I think the writing was good, but it felt juvenile. And like you said, gosh, man, I don't know. I forget your name, man. I'm sorry.
Oh, Brandon, my bad.
Brandon. Yeah, this might be one thing we could do is in the future somehow, like, I don't know how people's pictures on here, but Brandon, like you're saying, kind of very young adultish. The whole vibe of the book was very young adultish.
Yeah, I felt the same way 100% on that. It kind of like, going into it with an open mind, just like, okay, I'm going to do this for the book club. I probably wasn't going to buy the book offhand, maybe checked it out at a trade or something. I was really like, Emilia Clarke wrote it, so that's what got my attention. I was like, okay, she's an actress trying to get into the comic book world. She's been exposed around and it even says in the back end, she got exposed to comics like crazy. So it's like, you're working with Marguerite Bennett. I'm not a huge Marguerite Bennett fan. I don't know if I just haven't read the right stuff, but even her Batman short stories and whatnot don't really appeal to me. The small things I have read, it just hasn't really attracted me. So I agree with the writing on that. We're not the target audience, the demographic or anything.
Right.
So I want to, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I want to take 2 seconds to welcome Jessica Hoover, who Jessica reads on Instagram, and Collect Them All or Die Trying. They just popped in, and they're both also agreeing. The same thing with KK, the breakdown about the art. And going into the young reader, again, it goes back to that little synopsis, and I kind of wish they would have put this at the front of the book, her little dialogue, because she did say in there directly, like, this is kind of for the youth. So you guys are right. We aren't the target market for this.
To manage expectations, right? You're saying, but of course, anything that's titled "Mother of Madness," and it's about a single mom. Granted, I wasn't going to pick this up. The only reason I did it was for the book club,
right?
I'm curious. You mentioned Emilia Clarke wrote this. I'm wondering if she wrote this like Keanu Reeves writes Berserker.
Oh,
with Matt possibly the main writer, and he
he was really just a story concept, and
right.
Gave it to a writer to put out. Yeah.
So that is something I do want to discuss.
I'm just curious about that. How much she's really hands-on. Sorry, Jeff, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. So I do definitely want to get into that topic as well, but I think I want to continue down with certain aspects of the book first, because we can all agree that the artwork's amazing. They did a really good job, and I like to see artwork like this in other comics that have lacked a little bit. I do agree too, like the writing itself is really well done. Like you could tell the writer knows how to write. I couldn't do it this well. Now, again, not my demographic, not for me. It's not something like I think within the first, like it was cringy for me to get through the first 3 pages personally. And I tried to keep an open mind and open sense, but the biggest way I had to realize that is this is speaking to a certain type of individual and maybe a new group of people coming up in the world that not for me. And I guarantee there's a lot of people that probably love this. So another aspect of the book that I did like, though, was the idea behind her superpowers. I think the idea was great, but I think the practicality of it actually failed personally.
Absolutely. Yeah. Unless she has tight control over how her emotions pop up, she's going to be a mess.
So that begs the question, because I had that same discussion with somebody else earlier about that. Is this showing that as a woman, and I'm not a woman, so I can't speak on that behalf, can you keep your emotions that well in check if when you laugh, you just turn to jello? If you know what I mean? Because there's so many things that tie in. And if you're not feeling these emotions constantly, you're going to be in a constant state of flux with these powers. So it's kind of hard to navigate, like, how strong does she have her emotions in check?
Or just be like Hulkin. I'm always angry.
Well, yeah. I kind of took it more of a even when it comes down to the writing and, you know, the concept, what you're saying, Mother of Madness, and even reading the first 3 pages, I kind of had in my head kind of like the really early Vertigo books, like Shade the Changing Man, and like maybe some of the early Sandman stuff like that. Like I kind of felt that young vibe coming out of it straight away, and I expected some sort of reality warping type of thing. And early Shade the Changing Man is not only kind of horrific, it's really scary, but it is very like on the emotional spectrum of just controlling the badness. And I feel like this was a kind of that had to have been some sort of inspiration behind all of this. So her controlling her emotions, that controls her body, that also kind of has some Doom Patrol aspect to it as well. So I feel like it was kind of some of these ideas and concepts blended together, and that's like her flaw, her struggle is having to control her emotions so that everything around her doesn't fall apart. And I think, you know, overcoming that aspect, and that's something that we all kind of have to do in our personal lives, like not get too angry when someone says something that like upsets you, or, you know, just keeping your cool when you're just not mentally there and you want to break down. And I think that might be like what we see develop a little bit more, just controlling your emotions and what that does and how to do it. And I mean, again, coming out of a pandemic aspect, you know, stuff like meditation and everything's bigger than ever now. So it's just kind of finding that like center, to not have everything crumble around you. But that's the way I took it. Just like an early Vertigo book, like 1992, 93 or something.
Okay. No, I mean, I agree with some of that. I can't really put some of it into my own life, but I think there's an element to this book that, as you notice, KK, the breakdown, had mentioned he had a few cringe reactions too, but he hopes he gets to the right intended audience, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I mean, for me, I'm not the intended audience. I do wish, honestly, we had a couple other people in this discussion. I wish Jessica was able to get on live with us, and a few other women to bring out their perspective and what they thought. I did see a really funny, I think, Mark, it was you who actually brought it to my attention, this other review from a husband and wife team and how they kind of discussed it. And it was interesting to see the different perspectives from both of them.
I think maybe in issue 2 we'll learn more about how she handles those powers, because for the most part I think this issue dealt with just getting into her headspace, and the powers were thrown in as a shit, we're getting to the end of the book, we need to discuss some powers, throw them in. The powers just seemed very forced at the end, very not even a lead into, it was just sort of just a hard break into that. But the rest was about her headspace. And I think my biggest objection or my biggest gripe or whatever about this book is her headspace. But maybe in the second one we'll learn more about those powers. As Collectamal says, you know, how does she actually manage all that?
Yeah, no, I mean that's a really good point, because this is the difficult part for me. I might read book 2, but I'm not going to lie, probably not. I would like to just to learn more about it, but I just know this. I'm already going to drop it out of my reading list personally. Not saying it's a bad book. It's not that it's not well written. It's not got great art in it. It just doesn't speak to me, and so. You know, I gave it a try, and it, you know, there was also a lot of flaws. Again, talking about the superpowers themselves, I didn't like the way that it had the spectrum altogether and how you can do it with the emotions, but there were so many just holes to it in the first book that I wish it would have gave maybe an origin story more, and how she was able to deal with a lot more of that in her youth.
Sure, and you got to piece in that she took these pills, these mysterious medicines. You sort of piece that together.
Yeah.
That threw me off. Like I had to kind of like look back at the panel and be like, how did all this come about? Like the whole thing with the pills and the medication and everything, that just really didn't, I don't know. I don't know what kid's going to take a bunch of random pills.
And really just in the last couple of pages, really, the rest was, again, just her headspace about, look at me, I'm marginalized and objectified, and now I've got powers. Look out.
Yeah, and that's the hard part for me to wrap my head around, especially in certain aspects, to where I don't really want to get too much into the socioeconomics of it all, I guess would be the easiest way to say, when it came down to like certain aspects of like how people feel marginalized in our society, she does a good job to represent that. It's just hard for me because I lack the understanding, because I'm not a woman, because I don't have these experiences that she's showing and reflecting. Matter of fact, in certain aspects, I was actually a little bit offended myself, because if I ever heard a man say a certain thing like she described in this book, I wouldn't tolerate it, on some level. So it's this weird, but I get where the point was she was trying to make. But I got really confused throughout the book and the storyline and the writing multiple times, and I had to go back and read panels again because I lost track of where we were going in the story, and it didn't have that continuity that I was used to. And like I think in that couples breakdown, when they were talking about in certain panels, like I'm so used to the Punisher, reading the Punisher, having the narrative of him speaking in the boxes, and then obviously the bubbles and other things to describe it. And in here, it just jumped around so much. I didn't really know who exactly was talking, or when they were talking, or how it was actually structured.
And maybe that's kind of the point, right? Maybe that was the way, that was the intention of it being written, that they wanted it to be frenetic. I was talking with actually I was chatting with David Quinn a couple weeks ago, the writer of Faust.
Cool, yeah.
And he was talking about, like, we were just talking about that first issue, and the way they wrote the whole series is they didn't want it to be apparent which part of John Jaspers was talking, so it was this or that, so these two different parts of his psyche kind of go at it and stuff. And the intention of that was to really just make it feel mad, make it feel distressed and kind of all over the place and such. And maybe that's the point here too with that, is it wasn't a smooth read. It was sort of a bouncy read in that sense. Maybe that was the point.
Right. So Jessica had chimed in, and she said, I will say I can absolutely relate to the offhanded comments that are made around her, but honestly, it was still very too much. It felt too constant. So, yeah, and I think, you make a good point. I think you're 100% right that these do happen in our lives, in our society. And I think she needed to make it more constant in the book to kind of just make that point across. I think that was kind of why she delivered it that way. So it makes sense.
But but the part is, there was no redeeming quality of any man in the book.
None at all, except for her son. And, that's, but I mean,
I work in probably the most hyper masculine field out there. I'm a firefighter.
Right.
This type of way they're presenting this man discussions, I don't get. I don't buy that.
No, not at all. And it felt like this really is, and it's kind of, I hate to say it this way too, but, it is marketed as a feminist book. But when you push certain aspects of that, like too much, you're just like, okay, you're kind of crossing the line on what's actually like the point of feminism, and putting in her face like so much without enough redeeming qualities. It's just like, it's not all like that. And it's
right.
I mean, it's shameful that is the perception that they probably mostly get. And maybe it's not all like that, but the majority of it is, and there's a handful percentage that really aren't like that. I guess, also targeting a younger audience in that sense, it could be like, hey, don't act like this. Like, this is the bad way to act, like, and just really pushing it in a younger audience's face to be like, this is wrong. Look at this and know that it's wrong.
I think that kind of really dovetails into sort of my issue with her as a hero. I'm not sure to see her as a hero, right? I mean, we're dealing with someone whose identity revolves around being objectified. I mean, that's what that's who she, like, she's fighting. That's who she is. That's who she's going to fight against, type of a thing. Mm-hmm. That objectification. So to do that, I am objectified. I am marginalized. I am, I don't know if those are really heroic virtues. If those aren't heroic virtues. There's nothing to really grab on here and say, you know what? I mean, in my view, like, the hero is someone that's the archetype, right? The Zeus, the Odin, the Perseus. You know, these are people we look at and like, that is those are good virtues I should embody in my life. Taking an identity of a victim, taking the identity of someone who's rejected, taking that as your identity, I don't see that to be heroic.
You know, that's a good point. And to go off of what KK just mentioned in the comments, he said going too hard in the point does make it difficult to lose yourself in the story. And he's right. So it's kind of like watching a movie, and I mean, this is kind of a really lame example, but let's say you're watching a movie and you see something in that movie that you're really familiar with in real life, and they just totally blew it in the movie. Well, it takes you out of that area of suspension of disbelief. And when that happens, it breaks you out of the storyline. So if you're constantly, like, as a man, you know, an older, you know, not like a 20-year-old man or anything, I'm in my 40s now, going back and reading this, I was raised a certain way. I was raised by nothing but women, number one. My mom, my grandmother, my great aunt, my two sisters. Like, you know, I've had a lot of that around me already. But even reading this, it got to a point to where, like, I kept getting broken out of the story because I felt like things were just getting pushed too much. And if I can't just stick with the storyline, like that was the hard part for me, to maintain staying in the story without getting like, wait, this doesn't make sense to me anyway. It doesn't make sense to me, but it was just too much, I think. And maybe it's because it's the first book and the first, you know, one that they did, and maybe number 2 will actually ease up on that. It'll get more into the story and have a fun narrative and be enjoyable. But unfortunately, I don't know maybe I'll read 2. I don't know.
So with that, do you think after reading this, do you think this book has staying power?
I think it does, personally. I think it will, because of how our society is today. There is a young population that is eager for new stuff that is outside of the contextual norm, and this kind of breaks that barrier a little bit more. And here's a good positive I saw overall with this whole thing. So a lot of people in the comic community, you have the two sides, the ones that embrace the change of certain characters and those that get pissed off when suddenly, why are you changing Tony Stark to a black guy? Why is Nick Fury a black dude? Why, you know, all this change happening with regular characters coming up. People always argue those points. With this, it's a brand new character. It has all new aspects that can come in and change, and they can have their place in the comic world, and people can be more attuned to it. I think it's going to be a staying power. I think it's going to help change the dynamic to where we don't need to have 700 different versions of Spider-Man. But don't get me wrong, Miles Morales and all the Spider-Man that they've done, I think they did a good job in the multiverse and how they've actually incorporated it and done it. But I think this opens up a whole new way that they can incorporate it with superpowered individuals and have a whole new take on it, as opposed to changing other characters necessarily, potentially.
Well, also you're looking at, you know, of course, demographic and age. Like you mentioned, you're in your 40s. I'm like about to turn 30, and I was looking at Emilia Clarke's age. She's 34, so she's like in my age range in a sense. And looking at the way society is and growing up with social media and all that stuff, I could see how some of this is just so in play right now, in terms of just like socially active. And then you're also having a book with nothing but a female creative team. You know, Amelia, Margaret, and Leah, the artist. I mean, that's kind of a standout thing for, especially nowadays in the industry. And you're kind of coming out of the era of, you know, we had a Warren Ellis scandal a year ago, and we have some other stuff going on that's like really hard for showing how hard it is for women to even break into comics and actually have published work. So I think the staying power is going to really resonate in the creative team behind it. And how it kind of resonates to, I guess, a younger generation and what they're trying to communicate through that. Also, it's 3 issues, very digestible. Like,
it's only a 3-issue series?
Yeah, 3-issue series.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that.
And it'll probably be on my pull list, just since I like read and I write comics and I am a writer. I think it's a cool thing just to kind of dive into that aspect and whatnot. But if if I wasn't doing it for a purpose, as like to study like a character and just study like, it's female characters. It's cool finding a book where you have female characters written by females. It's like, for me, that's just like something to study. But if it wasn't for some of these aspects, I don't think I would have picked it up. If I wasn't like in that mindset right now, it probably wouldn't be my pull list.
I think with this book, in one aspect for me where I am kind of excited for it is, there's only three of us, but there's three guys sitting around discussing this book from different backgrounds of life. We all read this book. So it shows that there is something granted, Mark, you read it because you wanted to participate in the book club and kind of got into it, and you probably wouldn't have gotten it before. I got it because I was kind of really unknown about what the book was going to be. I just knew it was about a single mother with, powers. And then Brandon got into it because it's kind of in his demographic of he's a writer and he wants to absorb all kinds of other context to get it. But end of the day, we all read it. We all have our views on it. There's elements of it that we do enjoy and we do like, and things clearly we don't like and probably will never, enjoy about it. But I think that's the beauty of it. And I think that's the beauty of all comics, really. You can love them or hate them, but there's a place.
I think it's interesting where you said, a single mother and stuff. Like, it was pushed as she's a single mother with powers, as opposed to she's a female with powers who also happens to be a single mother.
Right.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Both those kind of say the same thing, but completely different approach. And This is, I'm a single mother and I've got powers, which is a totally different story than I'm a female with powers and I happen to be a single mother. Very different approach.
Yeah, that's very true. That's super true. Actually, speaking of the powers and everything, I think I accepted them a little easier. The order this book is put in is very odd. If we would have read that introduction right away, I think we would have understood a different mindset. But also, the last page has this like kind of scale of what her powers are.
Yeah.
And I saw this first. That was like, I opened the book and I saw this little back part first. So I kind of understood what I was about to walk into. But if I didn't see this back page first and then kind of saw everything unravel, I don't think I would have appreciated it or understood it as well. These are all things that would have been awesome as just a nice forward. Even just, promoting the book, if we would have seen something like that. So it is funny how we all kind of read it in a different order and we all had a different perception and understanding of it because of that order we read it in.
No, that makes sense because I literally opened up the first page and just started getting into it. And I think I was like the very first page where she's just like, hello there, talking to me, and it was like, hey, okay, that engaged me initially. But then it really just started beating me up. Like, where's the superpower? Like, why is she here? What is going on? It really got thrown off. And it just, I don't know. I got tuned out pretty quick. So I had to read it a couple more times because I wanted to try to like actually embrace it a little bit more and give it more credit that it's due, because in the back of my head, it's kind of going to the next segment I want to kind of talk about for a second was, all right, Emilia Clarke wrote this because she had her own personal whatever idea. And, we all know that she started getting back into comics, or she started getting into comics because she's going to Comic-Cons from Game of Thrones and all this kind of stuff. But part of me was like, is that really the truth? Or is it because somebody approached her and was like, hey, Keanu Reeves is writing a comic. Right. You're an actress. You can write a comic. And next thing you know, we're going to see all these new actors and actresses getting their own comics out there. It's kind of like the restaurant franchises. It's the same situation. They just put a name on it just to make more money.
Vanity project.
I don't want to be that pessimistic, but I feel like that's part of it too.
Well, I mean, not to be mean, but who at CGC was like, this is going to be a good idea because we could do a signing and then you get upcharged because it's an actress. They did a signing with her already at CGC for this too. So it's like, there might be some, you're right. There's some underlining incentives having
with
that
right?
big name.
If Emilia Clarke wasn't on here, would this book have even been noticed as much as it had been?
Not at all.
I don't think so.
I think it would have just.
So.
I mean, here's the reality of it. Bennett, I know a little bit, but that's it. And so, without an actual for me anyway. Now, here's the thing: because we all have our own little groups of kind of authors and artists that we normally follow. If let's say Garth Ennis wrote this, then it would be on my radar. Then I would know. Then maybe I'll check it out because he's a writer that I do follow and I enjoy his stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the only reason why I truly picked this up was because of Emilia Clarke. And
that's the only reason we're talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at I'm so sorry. Bennett's past work, her stuff that she has worked on, and it's really nothing. Animosity might be the closest thing I would have picked up from her, but I didn't read any of her DC work except for some small stuff, some Future State. But yeah, she's not a writer I really am drawn to because I'm not into the bombshells. I wasn't into World's End or Power Rangers or Josie and the Pussycats. All of her titles she's written, I have been curious about Animosity though, or Evolution or Horde. I wouldn't have read any of those, so this book would have just gone right past me, to be honest.
Yeah. Now I do kind of want to check out a little bit more of Bennett's work now because, again, the writing in this I do feel is good. The context not really for me. The subject of itself not really my thing. But the writing I felt it was good. And the art was amazing. So, the artist and the writer, I might check out some of the other work as well. And then, yeah, Brendan, you're right. It is only a 3-book series. So maybe I will just, read them all just to have, the whole story finished out just to have a better perspective. But I have the benefit of Swords to be able to read it because I have a shop and I can get these books in because others are ordering them. Mm-hmm. I don't know if those that are actually out there, Mark, I don't know if you're going to order 2 and 3. Are people going to drop the $5 on it to check it out or wait
there's 20 other good books to read that I know I will enjoy rather than spend my money on another one of these.
Right.
Oof, yeah. And this is a $6 book. Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate the prestige to the cardboard, cover and everything, and it's very simple, kind of graphic novelesque. But $6 a book, that's a little steep no matter what publisher you are, no matter what you're doing. But I feel, again, you have that name on there. If her name, Emilia Clarke, wasn't on there, $4 I would see this going as because it's an independent, one of the bigger independent publishers. But $6, wow, I didn't notice that.
It's funny, there's a comment from Collect 'em All or Die Trying saying things like you watch 23 Marvel movies, you can give me 5 pages, which she does at the beginning. Yeah. That put me off big time. No, fuck you. I don't got to give you nothing.
Right?
It felt very much of, I'm going to guilt you into having to listen to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't like that. And then there's this one page here where she's attacking this dude and she's invisible. I forget exactly what emotion does that.
Oh, yeah.
But this dude, how do I do this? This guy is some human trafficker. And he's in this business suit, chilling in the kitchen, cutting up an apple. I don't know. That doesn't seem maybe I'm going for the stereotype of a human trafficker. I don't know, but that seems out of place. And then coming down, is this, how do I do this? What is this? Her passing gas.
Right?
There was no I'm eating a chimichanga before I go and do this. Hopefully, there's no, it's felt, there are things in this book that felt out of place.
Right. And you know what? That brings me to the first aspect of into the 3rd page. But before I get into it, Jessica mentions, I'll be honest, I don't know if I'd pick up the next issue either. Maybe if I had a light week that week. And then KK agreed on all accounts, though I hope it's better. And then Collectum is talking about, I'd get the next issue in hopes that she gets a better hero costume. I agree with that. But one aspect of this within the first couple pages, or maybe it's the 3rd page or so, she's at the party, right? And it's right here. People start talking about her. She has a little blood mark on the back.
Right.
This part kind of bugged me in the context, like, we know this happens to women, unfortunately. We know that. We're not, but here's the thing. As a dude, right, if I pee my pants or if I poo my pants, I hope I feel a little bit embarrassed for doing that in public. Like if I happen to spill coffee on my shirt, oh no, I should probably go into the bathroom, try to change my shirt, clean it up. So I get where they're trying to go with that, but
her attitude was deal with it. I mean, that was her attitude. Deal with it.
Right. Like, I get you should just like, hey, it is what it is. And yeah, it is what it is. And nobody should make fun of anybody in those kind of circumstances. But you should still have a little sense of like dignity, like, hey, I need to scoot out of here real quick and, adjust something.
Yeah,
I think that was a little off-putting. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I agree 100%. That part did throw me off for a minute because you kind of weren't sure what it was at first, So you're right. Some of the aspects, the fart scene out of nowhere, like it didn't fit her character. It didn't fit like everything that we've seen. And also, costume. It's horrible. I'm so sorry. That design, I never understood it, but that's where I thought the madness came into play. It was going to be something literally maddening, like crazy. But it turns out it's just emotional, not maddening. So I don't know how that fits on that spectrum at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I really think it comes down to that maybe I will read 2 and 3 just to see what they do with it and check it out, and I'll let you guys know.
You're a glutton for punishment, man.
If not, it'll be on my eBay store.
But so I will say this: like, I didn't like the book. I felt it was. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But I'm glad it's out there for the person who would enjoy it.
Right. Agreed. And I think I'm gonna have to go with your same.
That's the kindest thing I can say, probably.
I personally, I think there's a couple people I probably recommend it to just because. Okay, here's an interesting concept, I guess. I know a lot of people that don't read comic books, but I also know a lot of people that don't read comic books that they would actually probably get a kick out of. Mm-hmm. And that might actually get them into comic books. And so I think there are a few people that I'd probably recommend it just to get them into possibly reading comics, because I know their mindset does align a little bit with Emilia's writing and Bennett's writing in this and where they wanted to go. So, I mean, that's their I guess you would say their political ideology would kind of align more with that. And so I think, but for me, I don't like it. There's a lot of people I wouldn't recommend it to. And I honestly was not a giant fan personally either. I don't think it's a bad piece of material. It is just for me. That's kind of my consensus on it.
I could totally agree that I have friends that I'm sure will love it. It fits them. And honestly, it's going to open up more people to comics. And that's the cool part. It's going to find this demographic it's aiming for, and those people will be attracted to it, which open up more gates. People who are just Emilia Clarke fans are probably going to pick up this book no matter what. And then that could segue into other things. So in the sense of bringing in more to the comic book community, I can see the point of this book. So there I would totally agree with. But.
As a side note, I think the series that I've had the best luck of hooking people into comics who haven't read comics to find like I can really enjoy comics, Stray Dogs.
Yeah.
Stray Dogs is the hook that has got like, oh, this is that series is my hook series.
Yeah. I would actually say Sandman has always been my hook series for people, because I've always gone around like a lot of people that are very, comics are just superpower, goofy, dumb stuff, but once I tune them into Neil Gaiman and Sandman, they're like, oh, wait, there's actual literal, like real writing. Like, okay, here we go.
Dude, yes. That's my, I have one comic book tattoo, and it's of Dream's Helm. That's, yeah, that's my shit right there. I love Sandman.
I have never read Sandman.
collect them all or die trying shot in a question for you guys. What's the difference between Maya's mom character and Deadpool, especially since Emilia compared her character to Deadpool on many occasions?
I did not know that. I haven't. I'll probably check out some interviews with her about all this later on. But I mean, I don't know. I'm not a Deadpool fan in general.
Yeah.
So I think knowing that or thinking that, I would have turned this book away and just got it for the book club. Like, I think that would have just ruined it for me. I don't really care where Deadpool's gone or headed or anything.
Yeah, I think really the only thing I know about Deadpool is the movie stuff. I haven't read any of his comics.
I do know enough about Deadpool to kind of throw some kind of something out there for him. I guess I don't like that they compared themselves to each other. The only thing that I can see, I mean, obviously power's not even close to the same kind of thing. Like, they're different. But I think what they're trying to get at is Deadpool is an asshole that will say anything he wants when he wants and not care. Where I think she's doing the same thing where she just doesn't care. Kind of like I was talking about, like, she got the blood splatter and it's like, whatever, I'm walking around and I don't care. I think that's kind of where she's trying to go with it. But
the humor,
it doesn't work because she doesn't have the humor.
So if that's the case, like, I think it fails in that sense. Then if it's all about I don't care, but then she's very caught up on how she's being looked at, treated, thought of, represented, etc. That she clearly cares a lot in this book about what other people think about her. Right.
It's a weird conundrum of sorts, because I know the writer and Emilia are trying to show that you shouldn't care and trying to teach young kids that mental health is something to be looked at, and our mental health really suffers from others around us and how they treat us. So you shouldn't really care. But at the same time, when you're focused on caring so much what others think, well, then you are caring. And so it's a hard adage. It's kind of contradictory in and of itself. But I kind of see where they're trying to go with it. It's just not. I don't think it came off right. I don't think it worked out well.
Yeah, I can agree.
But I mean, yeah. Other than that, any last comments on this? I mean, here's one thing I do want to say: the artwork in the back, all these are rad. Like,
yeah, I like those.
Cool stuff.
Yeah, if you're a kid, if you're like in your teens and you're reading this and you get to the end and you're an aspiring artist, like, this is a cool place to go to, like, I love it when books do this.
Yeah, love that stuff.
To just learn how to, like, draw that kind of stuff.
The art,
so, pretty cool.
The art and the panels, favorite thing about the book.
100%.
Probably what would keep me interested. Maybe if the art was different and the story was still the same, maybe I wouldn't enjoy it as much. I think the art really does raise the bar a lot on this one. Yeah. That's probably my final words on that in a very polite way. I
got one last final word before Mark, you stick in. There is another point that I want to make that I liked but didn't like at the same time, knowing that, like, this is supposed to be a pretty, she says she's a feminist. She's going towards that route. She's trying to do this whole idea of, like, representing women in certain ways. But I'm not going to lie, when I first opened this first page and saw her there, to me, maybe I'm sexist, but she's hot. She's a smoking hot, woman in my eyes. And that kind of bothers me in the context, like, she's a good looking woman. In the context of, like, if they're really trying to put this point across, like, women shouldn't care how they think, you would have thought that they would have actually drawn her and created her not in the standard fashion of what a good-looking woman to today's standards are. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys think she's not good-looking. I don't know. I thought she was a really attractive, character and female. I would have thought maybe they would have, made her a little bit more heavy, maybe missing a tooth. I don't know, something not so attractive.
They make her look she kind of looks like Emilia Clarke in some of the panels too, and I mean
Well,
she's a
there's-
gorgeous woman.
there's
So
this
it's
one
like,
picture I'm looking for, this panel that you just held up, Jeff. That there's a picture of. Actually, I swear to God, it's like Emilia Clarke in the background. I'm trying to find it.
yeah. I will say this first page, I get some Akira vibes.
Oh, right here.
This first one.
Like that totally looks like Emilia Clarke right there.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna switch keep that up real quick, Mark.
Okay.
I want to move that over so I can get this screen. Why is that not working now? Boop. Okay. Oh yeah. No, absolutely.
I just think it's neat.
I mean, obviously not as Khaleesi when she had her blonde hair, but like in normal, in general, like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, stuff like that. Like I've been reading some of the old X-Men, from Chris Claremont, and there's actually pictures of him in the panels talking with his artists and stuff about, oh, what are we gonna have next? Big aliens and big aliens. It's funny, and so I think it's funny when it gets kind of meta like that in the books.
Mm-hmm.
My final thought on the book, I didn't like it. However, I'm glad I read it. I like reading stuff that's outside my comfort zone, gets me thinking and stuff like that. So I can appreciate that. Yeah, I think if Emilia Clarke was not attached to this, to that name, this wouldn't have caught anybody's attention whatsoever.
No.
And all the marketing around this was about Emilia Clarke.
Yes.
Not about really the
100%.
book itself. It was about Emilia Clarke.
And let's be honest, even the name of it, even the name, Mom, Mother of Madness, like Mother of Dragons,
right?
It all marketed perfectly, and they did well, and it's just because here's the thing with Berserker, Keanu Reeves' Berserker, I truly believe that would have held its own. Keanu didn't have to be behind that. I think it would have gotten out and people would have attuned to that anyway. And that just kind of shows the demographic of comics on some level on the mainstream. Mm-hmm. That's why I do like that Emilia did get involved. I'm glad this did get out there because I think it will bring more people into comics that probably weren't, or at least the demographic has a space where they can find something. And when you read something like this, for me, that in my opinion, I didn't like, that just makes me love the stuff that I do like even more. And
most definitely.
Which Jessica, definitely agree. Mark, you were 100% right. Says collect them all, die trying. But yeah, so to I guess wrap it up. This was fun, guys. I appreciate it. And the next one is going to be King Spawn #1. And I want you guys just real quick. How do you feel about that coming out? You guys Spawn? Respawn?
So I like Spawn, but I have what is it going to be? What are we now on? It's like Spawn number 320. I think I stopped reading Spawn around issue 30, and I started buying it again around 300 just because my buddy became the publisher of it.
Right.
I haven't read any of those though. I just like to pay for his paycheck, help him with his paycheck. So I'm excited about what's going on in the Spawn universe. It's expanding and all that kind of stuff. Whatever, we'll see how it goes. But I mean, Todd McFarlane is one hell of a salesman.
Oh, big time.
Oh yeah, yes.
He's probably the best salesman in comics.
Big time. Mm-hmm. I think that to me, I'm excited for King Spawn. I really am. I mean, I haven't followed a lot of the main storyline up to 320. I jump around a lot, but I've always had. I think Spawn is probably in my top 5 favorite, just indie type, just heroes of sorts, especially the old HBO movie, those elements. Yeah. And so I'm excited to see what this universe really has to offer. But there was a big thing how do I say this? Everybody's talking about how King Spawn is the #1 biggest image selling comic, modern age and all that kind of stuff. And it's true, but part of me wonders if it's only because McFarlane was so brilliant to say, hey, what's going to work? I'm going to sign 2,000 copies. And then you have to get a 1 in 250 copy in order to get that one.
That's why. That's 100% why.
Variant,
because
variant coverage, man. It's
it's insane.
It's the gimmick of today.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I brought in one of the 1 and 250 for a customer of mine, and even with the book club discount and sales, I haven't even come close to selling the 250 that I have left. You know what I mean? Like, not even.
Oh.
So it's like, I wonder how many other comic book shops are in the same kind of like market. Like it's
you'll find them in the dollar bin in a year or two, right?
Yeah, it's not that. Like I'm honestly hoping that, like, they offer some kind of a return policy for some of these, because it's anyway, I won't get into the business side of it.
No, that's very true. That's a big point. Yeah, it's the biggest one. But when you have a variant incentive like that, where they're working with CGC for you to get it graded, dude, that's gonna get every flipper out there. And then bigger comic book shops that they're probably gonna sit on 500, 700 copies of that book, no matter what, because they want to get 4 or 5 copies of that signed one. 100% reason. I am hyped for it.
How many covers are there aside from that special one? How many variant covers do they have?
I think there's a total of 9.
Oh,
if I remember right.
There's a good amount. They're all pretty cool too. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I dig all the covers for once, but I've read the first 150 issues of Spawn. Maybe a little past that, and I've grown up on Spawn. I adored that movie still, despite the terrible graphics at the end. But that HBO show is great. Todd's a great guy. In fact, you could probably see my Spawn, where my Spawn sketch right there. It's a Bruce Timm Spawn sketch that I got Todd to sign too. I'm just a big fan of. In fact, dude, we got the Spawn Kickstarter figure right here.
Oh yeah, I got that.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I like Spawn. I'm super hyped about it. But I'm also very curious how they're gonna introduce this to kind of get Spawn back going again. It's a number 1. People could kind of jump into the universe. That's probably a good point. That 300 number does intimidate people. Jumping in 320, 318, it's kind of hard for a new reader to be like, yeah, I want to do that. I'm a completionist, so I want to start from the beginning and get to that number. But I think it's cool that he's capable of expanding this universe too.
Yeah.
As in, it's not Marvel or DC that's doing it. It's him. It's just been Todd from the beginning. So just out of respect for that.
And that's what I love about Spawn. I think there are creators and there are titles that are important for the industry, and Spawn is definitely one of those. And McFarlane and Spawn are definitely changed the industry and still continues to do so, obviously. So I think from that aspect, it's an important title.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm hyped for that. But I'll be kind of going in blind with you guys. I'm not caught up to Spawn, so we'll probably all be on the same page in that aspect.
Right. I think you said it best on that, Brandon. I think because jumping around in the 300 series, I've dabbled with it, but I am a completionist. I have that, like, I need to read everything, and with this, I'm excited because now King Spawn 1 can start kind of its own line, and then we got Gunslinger 1 coming out. I'm going to be stoked on that. So I get to get back into these areas and read more up on the Spawn universe in a whole different way. So, and it's going to bring so many other young comic book fans. Like, it makes me think of there's a I'm spacing her name right now, but she's in the comic book IG community and fam. She Spawn. If you guys follow her, shout out to She Spawn. So she has 2 young boys, I believe, and she's a huge Spawn fan. So these young kids that she's kind of, raising, get a whole new, I guess, generation for their needs, and I think that's kind of going to be really cool to see.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing. It's generational, right? Because it came out when I was, I don't know, 93, something like that.
92.
Yeah, and then so it's been generational. It actually, it's funny when you brought that up, Jeff. I went to a Ramones concert, and there was obviously a bunch of old folks like me there.
What up? Yeah.
And so the old folks like me, they're with their kids. And I thought that was super freaking cool. And I think that's really neat how Spawn is something that from our generation who grew up with Spawn can share with their kid, with their children. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I was born in '92, so like I grew up with this stuff, and I always thought it was like it, even probably maybe for you guys, depending on how you grew up. But like Spawn was such a mirror. He was a superhero version of Gene Simmons from Kiss, and I was just like, oh, this is even more badass. Like, and it's crazy that even my generation grew up on it, and with the video game like Spawn Apocalypse and the HBO show, that all drew us into it. And even friends that don't know a lot about the Spawn comics, they're still Spawn fans just because it looks dope, and people just love that outfit, the mask, the cape. The cape is the coolest thing in the world. So that generational gap, it's just continuing to expand, and it's kind of cool now that I'm somewhat getting a part of that because I'm now getting older and whatnot. But it is going to be an interesting thing to see how this blows up past us and whatnot right now.
No, I mean, it's true. And Mark, you said it great on that because actually, I think maybe it was like 2 or 3 years ago, I'd gone to this show, East Coast band Judge, if you've ever heard of the band Judge, grew up on them. But I remember being there, seeing 2 young kids, 12 or 13 years old, probably there with their parents, looking as I was passing with some friends of mine, looking at us and saying, wow, it's crazy to see people here as old as my dad. And it blew me away because it's the same thing within the comic book world as well. We have those generational gaps. And if you can continue to inspire the young generation, we're going to continue to have this out there. And it's cool to pass it on to the next generation because, we all get old and die eventually, and, it needs to keep on pushing.
I think it'll be neat to be part of that discussion because to look at, like, yes, Spider-Man's been around for freaking ever, Fantastic Four, X-Men, all these guys been around forever, but it's not having, I don't know if it has that same as Spawn is, where the parent sharing with the, I don't know if it has that same type of, cohesion. I don't know what to call it.
Or will it skip a generation like it does with certain things too?
Yeah. That's very true. Maybe it kind of did. I don't know. I don't know people younger than me that really get into Spawn. Even people my age aren't really that big of Spawn fans, but I guess it just depends how you grew up and what you were exposed to at the time. Sure. Especially as media was changing at that point. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting. I'll do some research. I'll ask around. I'll do a little survey or something with people I know.
All you got to do is have them watch the HBO Spawn movie with John Leguizamo as the clown dude. Like then it's so good.
And again, maybe part of the conversation we'll have too is I think part of Spawn's continued its staying power and appeal is it's all Todd McFarlane.
Yeah,
it hasn't been any other writers, no one else trying to change it. It's been one guy's vision,
and it's still $2.99.
Yes,
and you look at Stan Sakai and Asaki Yojimbo. You look at Cerebus, who was around forever. These ones have been these indie books that have hit these mega numbers. It's one vision, and that drives it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well. All right, so everybody knows next meeting. I'll let you guys all know when it is. King Spawn's going to be the next book, but Emilia,
do we have a date for that already?
I don't have a date yet. I'll get it hopefully honed in and locked in once I get a little bit more information from everybody else to see who can make it and when they can make it as well. I want to try.
When does that book come out?
The 25th. So next comic book day, it will be out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so get your orders in now from wherever you're going to get them. I prefer for me. And don't forget, join the book club if you're watching this on the rewind to get discounts for these up-and-coming books that come out. And I feel like one question, I was hoping to ask a few more of you guys, but since there's 2 of you, is the discount that I do give a decent discount on these books?
Honestly, for me, any discount is a cool discount. And you're coming up as a company, as a retailer. So I mean, I feel I feel bad whenever I take a discount. So I just want you to like have like the best out of it. But I mean, and everyone out there, like get a pull list going. Like it's the easiest thing to do. It took me 5 minutes to get a pull list with Coffee and a Comic, and now we have something worked out, and I'm super hyped about it. So check out the Apollo City Comics Instagram post from today. I even show how everything was packaged, what it came with, and that should convince you guys enough because there's some great stuff whenever you order from them. And that's just not promoting. That's just like truth.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. Plus I'm less concerned with the discount. I mean, obviously I love the discount, but I would rather that money goes to support what you're doing. The value is in the extra value you add.
Exactly. Couldn't said it better. Yeah.
That is definitely what I try to do. So I appreciate
that. That's what's worth it, not the discount.
Mm-hmm.
To me, right? I do I like to save money? Sure, but I'd rather have someone who loves what they're doing and show it in the way they provide service.
Right. Yeah. And
hopefully I don't get too big my britches.
I would pay $2 more since they're supplying the coffee. Like that's cool.
Well, I got a few things in the work that might tune in. I'm working with a couple coffee shops right now to try to work something out to where maybe I'll actually be offering just the coffee itself on my side if you want to just order a couple extra ones or whatever. So.
Oh yeah, you got that Frank Castle blend going on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, guys, I'll end it here unless you guys have any last minute remarks you want to throw in there. And but if not, we can end the broadcast and let people watch this and laugh at us.
Yeah.
Enjoy your books. Read more books.
Right.
Yeah. Check out Apollo City Comics podcast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. And I'll be around here every book club. So thanks for having me on, man. Thank you. It was good meeting you too. I just followed your page.
Right on, Brandon. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. No, Flip Through's got a great page. If you're watching this and you don't follow him, follow Apollo City and follow Flip Through. Both great people. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Right on, Jeff. Thank you very much for putting this together. We'll see you guys later.
Absolutely.
Later, man.
Take care.
See you.
Thanks, Jessica, for stopping in. This was fun. Can't wait for the next one. And it was fun. Collect them all. Die trying. All right, guys. Well, again, stay caffeinated. Stay reading comics. And we'll catch you next time. Have a good one.